but to speak with one with another, not just to shuffle in and shuffle out without talking to anybody.
So what does it mean to speak one with another concerning the welfare of their souls? How's that? Give me an example of how you would speak with someone at church that wouldn't be that way.
Yeah. I'm Danny. I'm in the bishopric of the Burton Fifth Ward, and I've just been wrestling with something. Sometimes I think we equate reverence means quiet, and I like the commentary that was brought up earlier. It was nice to see everybody, saying hi and talking about families and catching up, and that doesn't necessarily, just because people are talking doesn't necessarily mean that it's not reverent. And so, I don't know, and this is a sincere question. I'm not trying to, be a punk or anything like that.
All right, here we go. Let's hear it.
No. But sometimes I understand, and I watched the videos. The videos were incredible. That was time well spent. And maybe it's because I grew up in Felt, Idaho. I don't know. But I love watching people visit in the chapel. Mm-hmm. But I realize that sometimes others are perceiving that as that it's not appropriate. Now, I know it depends on what you're talking about, right? We're supposed to talk one amongst each other, to answer that question from Moroni 6. And so, and I get having it out in the foyer, but man, that's pretty reverent conversation that everybody's been talking about too. If one of my youth went up to a ward member in the chapel and sat down and said, man, I'd love to come swing by your house and help you with family history, I'd do a cartwheel. But that wouldn't be reverent, so I don't know. I just don't know anymore.
Let's go to that question. That's a great question, because a lot of the training talks about that. Let's see what everyone thinks, and then we'll elaborate on it. Sister back here, right in front of you. Yeah.
Just go to church a little early already, and then I just walk around the chapel and pray. Who am I supposed to greet? And I'll just sit really close to him and just talk quietly and say, hey, how are you doing? If I know something, about their lives, I might ask, how's your daughter? And we've had some beautiful conversations. And since I'm a super rule follower and I know that about myself, I'm going to be oh, I can only do this in the foyer. Instead of if that person got to church before me, or I'm just trying to figure that out in my head so that I'm listening to the brethren, but I'm also listening to the Spirit.
So these are perfect questions. This is why we're here talking about this precisely. So we've got a sister up here we haven't heard from. Then let's go here first, and then we'll go over there.
Hi, I'm Ann. I'm in a primary presidency, and I think we're trying to create a sacred space. Just like in the temple, there's appropriate things and inappropriate things. They ask us not to cheer outside of the temple so that we're not disturbing things inside. Just with the sacrament meeting, prior to it beginning, I just would like to share an experience. Several years ago, we were going through a really hard time, and it was very public. Everybody knew about it. So when I would sit down in sacrament meeting before it would start, I was trying to listen to the music and I was trying to get ready for the sacrament and take that enabling power of the atonement through the sacrament. That's when people would be like, oh, so what's the latest? Tell what's the update on your daughter or whatever. And then that was interrupted, and I didn't have that moment to sit, to ponder, to listen to the music, and to prepare. Of course we prepare at home too, but I just needed some time. So, and I know not everyone is there with a super heavy heart, but I think it would be beneficial, whether you have a heavy heart or don't have a heavy heart, to sit and just take some time to ponder and to listen to the music and just there's that space, there's that time. I think that's a really important time.
Great. So let's elaborate on that. We're in the chapel right now. Okay. The chapel's different right now than it is during sacrament meeting. Why is it different? It's different because we do not have the sacrament prepared. When the sacrament is prepared in this room becomes an ordinance room, just like an ordinance room in the temple. When we're just participating in a discussion in this room, it's just a room. It's just a room where we're discussing what we're discussing. But as soon as the bread and water have been prepared, it is an ordinance room. So it's similar if you were to walk into an ordinance room in the temple. There are times when we communicate, but we're instructed to communicate as minimally as possible and do so with whispers, if we do. And if we follow that same pattern in the chapel, when the sacrament's prepared, I think we would have an environment where someone who has a heavy heart, or all of us who need the enabling power of the atonement, that will be enhanced in our lives through partaking of the sacrament, where we can all prepare for that in a better way. And that's what Elder Anderson's trying to teach us, is when the sacrament is here, we treat the room differently. Sister?
It's fun, right? Okay. I don't normally participate. I just usually listen.
Well, thanks for participating.
But I just wanted to share an experience too. I was able to actually have a really good lesson for my own self about like reverence during sacrament. So when my kids were little, for a span of 5 years, and facilities, this doesn't work. We used to go 12:30 when church was 3 hours, reversed for 2 years, and then a year off, and then 2 more years. So I was a young mom, and my kids were little, and so the kids went to 2 hours of primary
Before.
and then sacrament meeting in the middle of the afternoon, just to let that sink in a little bit. Oh, and I was by myself, just another key thing. And I remember being in a 5th Sunday lesson and hearing people complain about how noisy sacrament meeting was. And part of me was kind of a little offended. I'm like, what are you expecting? It's nap time and all that stuff. And there was this an older couple, and he said, you know, what I just keep in mind is if Christ were here in our chapel, what would his reaction and his response? And I always thought about that. I'm like, if Christ were in our chapel, and in these sweet primary children getting to go to primary and having a wonderful lesson and the singing and sharing and all that time, and then being told they have to sit still quietly for an hour at nap time when they need snacks, right? Like, I don't think he would be bent out of shape because they were a little noisy. And I share this because reverend sacrament meetings can sometimes look a little different in my mind. That was, even though it was a little noisy, like that was first off as reverent as we could get. But also that would have been, I feel like if Christ were in that meeting, he would be able to say that was a reverent meeting. And that's always kind of, kind of going hand in hand, like we have the sacrament ready. What does this look like? And what is the kind of like that overall expectation? And if Christ were there, what would I want to say like, what would Jesus do? But, like.
What would Jesus do?
Yeah, what would Jesus do if he were here? Like, that's really kind of what it is. It's like, if he were here, like, first off, he would see someone who had a heavy heart, and he would want us to reach out to someone with a heavy heart. He would want us to ask how our families are doing. And he would want us to have, it might be as simple as how's your family doing, but that is one of those conversations